Step back. Josh, you with us today.
Yeah, I'm here.
Are we starting today on this?
Starting today on what?
Sponsorship.
Yeah. It's on the overlay and everything now, man.
All right. Well, how about that? Sponsored by Yahoo.com. We're very happy to have Yahoo.com sponsoring the Deeper Dive. Look, you don't want to make mistakes here. And we make enough of them, right, Adam? So you got to be careful. Dave Locker and Adam Shaw with you. We've got Adam Share with you. Speaking of mistakes.
Yeah, well, why do you want to start being right now?
Yeah, exactly. We've got 8 baseball games. No basketball today, man. You know why?
Yeah, because there's a terrible product on at like 8 p.m. tonight with 2 not very good teams playing basketball against each other.
What is the over-under? 77?
I haven't looked. I don't know.
Yeah.
Probably.
The Final Four, both of them were 131 and 131.5. So, yeah, exhilarating, thrilling basketball. It's still the championship. I get it. It's still, 2 good basketball teams, but it's just, I agree. As far as the product goes, they could do better.
I enjoy the tournament. I enjoy the excitement of the one and done, like all of that.
Well, of course.
But I still wish like there was some other sport, like professional sport, being played with that format.
Would you rather watch college basketball regular season or Olympic curling?
Olympic curling.
See, I wasn't sure how you'd answer that, but Olympic curling is pretty riveting.
Yeah, no, I'm not even totally joking. Like I watch more. It's probably in part because it's on once every 4 years or whatever. But
of course,
I definitely watch more Olympic curling than I do regular season college basketball.
And it's only on once every 4 years. Winter Olympics is fun, man. They got a lot of great stuff. The only one I don't like is, what do they call it? It's not like is it a triathlon where they got to shoot and then they got to ski and then they got to do pull-ups and then they got to make a bed. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. It's the winter version of the whatever it is in the summer where they swim and ride a bike and run.
Yeah, that's not for me. But anyway, let's jump right into it, man. 8 games to talk about. And, we've had a few slates already this season. This is, I think, the 12th day of the season where there haven't been a lot of high totals. Totally different today. We have 8 games on this main slate. You have the Rockies, the A's, the Braves, the Phillies, the Mariners, and the Royals with implied run totals of 5 or higher. That's 6 teams on an 8-game slate with 5+ implied run totals.
Yeah, it starts to get fun once you get through those first like 1 or 2 times through the rotation where like all the aces line up on the same slate and then all the bad pitchers line up on the same slate. You start to get some variety, some teams that you want to get their hitters, but also pitchers you want to pay for. I think this is when baseball starts to get really fun.
That's right. Moses says it's the biathlon. That sounds about right to me. I don't know. I just know
I'll take it.
Get in their bellies and they shoot, and then they ski off somewhere into down yonder. So we'll start game by game here, as we always do. Glad to have you with us, by the way, waiting for everybody to jump in. Baltimore and Oakland. So Marco Estrada is facing Andrew Cashner. Battle of the Juggernauts at Camden Yards. Estrada's actually had the luxury, though, of pitching his starts at a friendly pitcher park where the massive fly ball rate isn't going to hurt you. I mean, Adam, through 3 starts, do you know what his fly ball rate is?
I do not, but I'm going to guess like 65%.
73. 73% fly ball rate for Marco Estrada. So, bring him to Camden Yards where the temperatures are going to be in the mid 70s at first pitch, 74 degrees. I don't really care if he's facing a bad team in the Orioles. I'm still of the opinion that there is a lot of value for this Orioles team. Marco Estrada in hitter-friendly parks generally doesn't fare well, and he hasn't really been tested with that yet. Do you know where he pitched in his first start on March 21st? Do you know where that was?
I don't remember.
Okay. I'm saying it wasn't in America.
Oh, in Japan?
Or was that Seattle? That might have been Seattle. I can't remember. No, yeah, because they
Yeah,
faced
Seattle
Seattle.
played.
They faced
Yeah.
March 20. The season started on March 28th. They played on March 21st, right? Regular season. So I don't remember where it was. I don't know if it was hitter friendly or not, but each of his last two um, have been at O.co. This is a huge downgrade for a guy like Estrada, who we know is a fly ball homer prone right-hander.
Yeah, I wish they were bringing in some competent hitters to face him, but I certainly agree with you that there is some upside in some cheap Orioles bats here. A fly ball pitcher in Estrada in favorable hitting conditions. You have Trey Mancini, I think is really interesting. Last year it was kind of a lost season for him offensively after he looked like he was on the verge of becoming a pretty good offensive player. But right around this time, like late April last year, he had an ankle injury. He suffered like sliding into a wall going after a fly ball, missed a bunch of time, came back, and just kind of never was really himself again. And there was speculation that he was just playing injured the entire season. So I am interested, now that he is hitting the hell out of the baseball to start this year, maybe he really was just hurt all of last season, and he's a better offensive player than we thought once last season ended. Righty power against Estrada has always been where we want to target the most. So I do have some interest there. My concern would be that if you go into Baseball Savant and look at numbers against right-handed changeups, because that's basically what Estrada lives on. Mancini's are not that great. Really, the only guy on Baltimore that has good numbers is Chris Davis, and I'm going to take those with a grain of salt because it's Chris Davis. So from a pitch type standpoint, not a great spot, but I do like the idea of getting the Mancini for the home run upside here.
Dating back to the end of 2018, Chris Davis is 0 for his last 47.
Yeah. I went to the game yesterday, though. I saw him actually hit the ball a couple of times. It was pretty impressive.
Struck out the other two.
Yeah, well.
Yeah. Somebody posed a good question. What would happen if Trevor Rosenthal faced Chris Davis right now?
Chris Davis will refuse to swing.
I think he would swing on a hit by pitch. So he'd get hit in the head and strike out at the same time.
That's possible. I'd give Davis the advantage just because he leads the league in called strikes, pitches taken right down the middle. I think that there's a better chance he would just let Rosenthal walk him.
Very true. It's very possible if he doesn't hit him first.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, look, Estrada in a park like this, he's not going to fare well. I'm with you on Mancini. Look, I still think Jonathan VR is a perfectly strong play too. I know you didn't mention him. I don't blame you for not liking the Orioles as a team, but VR looks good right now.
Yeah.
And he's gotten a couple of years ago in 2016, he had a really strong season, and then 2 straight years he was pretty underwhelming. But look, he's got a pair of stolen bases, a pair of home runs, a couple doubles, a triple so far. He's batting leadoff. He's not wildly overpriced, and it's at Camden Yards. I have zero problem with a guy like Jonathan VR either. Now, look, is it a great stolen base matchup? No, it's not great, but he's the type of guy that's probably going to run anyway. It's just he had such trouble getting on base in the previous couple of years. I like VR leading off today.
Yeah, I agree with you there, and I'll throw Renato Nunez into the mix too. Especially, I think he's really cheap on FanDuel. 4,100 on DraftKings. I can take it or leave it, but he is a guy who he'll strike out, but he hits the ball hard when he hits it. And against a pitcher like Estrada, I like taking guys like that.
Yeah. What about on the other side here? You've got Andrew Cashner, and Oakland, as we mentioned, has the second highest total on this entire slate at 5.5. 5.5 run total here. Cashner's the type of guy, as you know, that will go out there and throw like 6 one-run innings with 1 strikeout and a ton of balls that should have gone for hits but didn't. But still, there's no way you can get away from this spot for Oakland. And I think one of the reasons is simply you have the way that, like, Matt Chapman, I really like at third base. I'll let you know what. Go ahead and talk about this matchup for Oakland against Cashner. By the way, I did reference all of this in today's deep dive on awesomemode.com. Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, obviously a good spot for Oakland. Well, one thing I noticed about Cashner, I hadn't really looked at it until I did the show with Josh this morning. Cashner for his career is like a 48% ground ball guy. And so I kind of just assumed last season was more of the same, where he doesn't strike guys out and he gets a bunch of ground balls. He only had a 40% ground ball percentage last season. So He's been getting ground balls through his first couple of starts this year, but if that's a skill that he's going to start to lose, like he's just going to become so bad so quickly. If you just look at the guys going against him here, though, it's a lot of power and a lot of guys that swing and miss. Cashner doesn't get swings and misses, so it plays up the skill set of guys like Chris Davis, Matt Chapman. I'm with you. I really like one of my top third base options. Kendrys Morales, I think, is an appealing option from the left side here against Cashner. Just a high upside stack, because you have so much power here, and then also a not very good Baltimore bullpen behind Cashner. And that's something that I think is important to pay attention to, especially with the direction baseball's going, where so many teams now have good bullpens because they just have guys that throw 100 miles an hour. It's not hard to find those guys anymore. And the Orioles, not one of those teams. So when you have a spot against a good starting pitcher followed by a not very good bullpen, it becomes even more valuable with how good bullpens have gotten overall.
I agree. Yeah, and I think some of these are going to be price dependent. By the way, Blake Snell is really damn good. What do you have?
Yes,
six one-run innings with 11 strikeouts today against the White Sox. Dear God, he just keeps getting. I love this guy, but anyway, when you're looking at where players are priced, I definitely think that plays a pretty big role here. When you're looking, Matt Chapman is $23 on Yahoo. Put in context, he's the second highest priced third baseman. On DraftKings, Chapman is $4,800, but he's quite a bit cheaper than Arenado. And then on FanDuel, you've got Matt Chapman at $3,700, which is way down. Arenado, Arenado, Machado, Rendon, Machado, Arenado, Bregman, Turner, Ryan Healy, Josh Donaldson, Maikel Franco are all more expensive than Chapman. So I do think some of these guys are more price dependent, like a Robbie Grossman, $2,700 on DraftKings, 4K on 4K on DraftKings, $2,700 on FanDuel, and $12 on Yahoo. And on Yahoo, obviously, the minimum there is $7. So that type of stuff needs to be considered because there's a lot of good teams and a lot of good hitting environments today, Adam.
Yeah, and the scoring system needs to be considered too. FanDuel, so taking Grossman as an example because his prices are so different. FanDuel, he's a more appealing play because of the type of player he is. Not a ton of power, doesn't strike out a lot, he'll walk a lot. He should be on base for the guys behind him to knock him in. That's more valuable on FanDuel than it is on DraftKings or Yahoo, where you're looking more for home runs. So the middle of the order guys are the more appealing options on non-FanDuel sites. So that's something else to keep in mind as far as guys like Grossman.
All right. Anything else you want to hit on from this Oakland offense before we move on?
Nope.
All right. Philadelphia, Washington. Second time they'll face each other already this season. They had a short 2-game series in Washington. They split it. But Vince Velasquez makes his first start of the season. He's made he's pitched 1 inning in relief. It was scoreless with 2 strikeouts. And then on the other side, you have Anibal Sanchez, who faced the Phillies earlier, coughed up 4 runs on 4 hits across 4 innings and walked 4 as well. He struck out 3 through 76 pitches. Look, you know where I'm going here. I think that this Phillies lineup is too potent against a righty who last year definitely showed some improvements. But when you're looking at Anibal Sanchez, who has a pretty decent sample, a pretty sizable track record that we can consider, he is someone that will give up home runs to righties. Since 2016, 2.0 home runs per 9. Great hitting weather at Citizens Bank Park. Great park at Citizens Great Park. Let's start with where you stand on Sanchez and this Phillies offense, and then we'll take it to the other side.
So if I have to choose one, I go to the Phillies offense, and that's going to be the case in most spots this year. They're not a team that I'm interested really in taking pitching against. With how many good hitter spots there are on this slate, though, I do think it's worth at least pointing out where things could go wrong. And Sanchez is a guy who relies, against hitters from both sides of the plate, relies pretty heavily on a split, changeup, whatever you want to call it. If you go and dig into the Philly numbers against that pitch, you do get some pretty high swinging strike rates for all of these guys. I don't think that Sanchez has an advantage here, but I do think that it sets up as a spot where if he has his good stuff today, he actually can have some success against Philadelphia. It's not a matchup where, you get some matchups where it's like, I don't care if this guy has the best stuff he's going to have all year, he's still going to struggle. I don't think that's the case here. So I do think it's a high upside spot for Philly. I'm not really looking to get to Anibal Sanchez with any sort of frequency here, I think that I would still put him behind several other cheap pitchers if I'm taking, a dart throw at those guys as an SP2. Just wanted to point out that if you go through basically this entire lineup, you get pretty healthy swinging strike percentages at Sanchez's main pitch.
Yeah, look, I think that's a good point. Just a counterpoint, though, the one thing that worries me when it's any pitcher against the Phillies is they've done an outstanding job already this season. And you look at the lineup, you look at their offense, it makes sense. They've done an outstanding job of really making pitchers work. They lead the league with a 15.8% walk rate. Forget about the power, but just the fact that a lot of these guys are working really long at bats. You don't get those strikeouts early on from Gene Segura, who is going to make pitchers work. And I do feel like the one aspect of this lineup is you have a lot of guys that will grind out at bats and really put some wear and tear on a pitcher whose pitch count should shoot up pretty quickly. And we've seen that over their first 8 or 9 games.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, especially because we know it's kind of a philosophical, organizational thing. They did the same thing last year.
Right.
So it's not like it's some, 2-week fluke. That's what they're looking to do. So yeah, I agree with that. And again, I'm not advocating for Sanchez or against Philly. I just wanted to point out that there's at least there's a clear path to how this fails.
Sure. We want to cover all angles anyway. So yeah.
Right. But yeah, I'm obviously 1 through 5, I think, are all really good hitters in this lineup. Michael Franco batting 8th should have no ownership, and he actually profiles as well as anyone on this team against Sanchez. So, I like Philly more than I like Sanchez.
All right, and that's where I'm at as well. The 1 through 5 plus Franco, who has had a lot to do with running those pitch counts up. You have Scott Kingery in the lineup today. Cesar Hernandez getting the day off. But really the 1 through 5 plus Franco, if you like Odubel Herrera, fine, but not really someone that stands out to me. Also McCutcheon's price. And Gene Segura, by the way, the one thing I like about Segura, I mentioned it a second ago, the guy doesn't strike out, Adam. He had a 3 strikeout game earlier this season, which was like one of the most rare things you'd ever see. He's $4,200 on DraftKings, which is really, really cheap. $16 on Yahoo. When you're looking at other shortstops, he is priced below 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of them. He's the 10th highest priced shortstop. Again, site-specific pricing definitely makes sense here, especially if you're looking at one-offs. What about on the other side with Vince Velasquez making his first start? I want your analysis on him. I will say, though, last year, if there was one thing about Velasquez, lefties really gave him a rough time, and especially at home where the home runs were a serious issue. I don't know if Juan Soto's ownership is going to stay as low as we had it projected earlier in the day, 4%. But to me, that's way too solid to pass up as your cleanup hitter for Washington. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I'm right there with you. This spot terrifies me for Velasquez. He obviously has good stuff. He's a hard thrower, has a pretty good slider. But I think this spot's really, really scary against this Washington team. You mentioned Soto from the left side. I really like him a lot. But really the entire middle of this Washington order, Velasquez sits between 60 and 70% usage on his four-seam fastball, averages around 94 miles an hour. If looking against right-handed fastballs, 94 miles an hour or greater since the start of 2017, expected WOBA was a 453 for Juan Soto, 418 for Rendon, 407 for Zimmerman, 359 for Suzuki, 353 for Eaton, 338 for Dozier. Tons of power also, especially for Soto, Rendon, Zimmerman. I think if Velasquez is off at all here, they really can make him pay. They're really good fastball hitters. It's just a spot that really scares me for Velasquez, and I like it a lot in tournaments. Having the middle of this order, mixing in guys like Dozier, Eaton, but Suzuki as a probably low-owned catcher option. Rendon's my favorite third baseman on the slate. Zimmerman's one of my favorite first basemen. Soto's one of my favorite outfielders. I really like Washington here. I'm
with you. What are your thoughts on Velasquez at a super cheap price on FanDuel?
He's like 68 on FanDuel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. I think it gets to the point there where at some point you just are more interested in someone's talent level than their actual matchup. And I would say $6,800 on FanDuel is that point, especially on a slate like this where we have some reasonable pitching options at the top, but at the bottom, you're talking about guys like Homer Bailey, who we still don't really know what we're going to get. Julio Teheran in Coors Field, Kyle Freeland against the Braves. I think that Velasquez is at similar price points. Velasquez would be my preferred option over all those guys.
Yeah, and on Yahoo, he's the third lowest priced pitcher, ahead of only Andrew Kashner and Homer Bailey. So you play two of them there as well.
Right.
It makes sense. But I'd be lying if I said this spot didn't worry me a little bit. Now, he does have strikeout upside. He is facing, he got 6 righties in the lineup? Your lefties are Eaton, Soto, and Wilmer Defoe. But if I had to, it's Juan Soto is my favorite bat here. And I don't know why, but Rendon's price point on DraftKings is absurd.
Yeah, it really is. Same price point, Justin Turner not in the lineup, but Turner's at that same price point, and both of them, it's just like they are such good hitters that they really, no matter who they're facing, should never be that cheap, much less on a day-to-day basis against, good but not great guys like Velasquez.
Right. Like Rendon being $300 cheaper or $200 cheaper than Mike Moustakas, who's at Angel Park, doesn't make sense.
Yeah, especially with how tight pricing has been on DraftKings this year.
Right.
Maximizing spots like that becomes really, really important. It's not like FanDuel where you can say, oh, he's at a good price, but so are these other 18 hitters.
Exactly. It's really surprising, but I don't know what the ownership will look like once we get our last update, but I can say that the one, we just updated 12 minutes ago. Let's take a look. So Juan Soto on, let me pull it up here. Soto on, wow, Yahoo is 0.4%. Let's see price that there. Juan Soto is $24, which, it's expensive, but 0.4% in this matchup is insane, Adam.
Yeah. On
FanDuel, you've got Soto coming in at 11%. I think that's the highest, unless it's gone up on DraftKings, and 6% on DraftKings. That's pretty wild, man. And I think most of these guys will be underowned. Outside of my guess is Rendon on DraftKings, where he's ridiculously cheap, would be the only one. Yeah, 20%. Anything else you want to hit on with this one before we move on?
No, I'm trying to get there. It is. I ran an initial crunch before the show, just to have some sort of idea of what I was getting to. I didn't get a ton of Soto in that, but I will manually be bumping him after the show. So I just wanted to see kind of where I was getting him there, and it's right around the field.
Sounds good. Houston, New York Yankees. Well, let's first just talk about Verlander because, he's the clear bona fide ace on this slate where you're not worried about a pitch count or anything else. We'll get it to Hyun-Jin Ryu in a bit. But he's also, from a price point, way cheaper than I thought he was going to be. Like, if I just looked at all of the names without looking at pricing first, I would absolutely expect Verlander to be above 11K on DraftKings, well above it on FanDuel. It seems like Yahoo is the one that has it more accurately, 54. Next closest pitcher is 46. But as far as Verlander goes on DraftKings and FanDuel, 10-4 and 10-7 respectively.
Yeah, and it's not like there's a ton of pitching to love outside of him. As far as higher upside goes, you have Ryu, who has, pitch count issues, as you mentioned. Same goes for Tanaka on the other side of this game. And then you have a lot of pitchers that have major, major flaws. Verlander hasn't been great in his first couple of starts this season, but I'm not overly concerned about it yet. His velocity looks fine. His spin rate on his fastball is in the same ballpark as it was last season. He's getting hammered on his fastball, but I think that's more a location issue than anything else. And I assume sooner rather than later, he's going to get his command back and locate his pitches where he wants them. So I'm not concerned about Verlander yet. The fact that outside of Yahoo, he is reasonably priced makes it, even easier. And then you don't have you have a Yankees lineup that's missing several of their starters. So Verlander coming in as my highest owned pitcher. I think that'll be the case for most people. But yeah, it's kind of a spot that I don't think it's too difficult to get there either, because in addition to him being cheaper than we expected, you have SP2s that, while they have flaws like Freeland, Teheran, Bailey, they're so cheap that you can pair them with Verlander and get more or less whatever bats you want.
Right. And I thought I scoured all of his stats looking for something that would, suggest maybe some reason why he wasn't pitching well or not great. But I didn't find anything, which just leads me to say, okay, he wasn't great. Like you said, missing his spots, but everything else seems to be fine here.
Yep.
And really, look, his first start, he was fine. Would he have 7 one-run innings with 9 Ks? I'm pretty sure that his swinging strike rate in that game was up there. So I don't know. Maybe it's really not something to be terribly concerned about. Look, the Yankees are missing some batters. I'm not going to pretend that there isn't still some potency here. I'm not looking to stack the Yankees against Verlander. But if his price was at a spot where he was priced normally like Verlander should be, it'd be a lot easier to get away from it. But I just find it ridiculous. By the way, 15.3% swinging strike rate through his first 2 starts. He's still missing bats.
Yeah, it's really just that he's made some mistakes with his fastball as far as location goes and gotten hit hard. There's nothing else to really take away from this so far. And you mentioned the price, but like $700 difference for Verlander, who can go 100 plus pitches, compared to Ryu, who is probably going to throw like 85. Madison Bumgarner is just not even the same caliber pitcher as Verlander, and he's 1,100 less looking at DraftKings pricing. So he really, relative to other pitchers on the slate, he should be much more expensive than he is.
What about on Yahoo, where it's a $10 difference? Verlander 54, Hyun-Jin Ryu and Madison Bumgarner at 44. There's a big difference there, but like you said, one of these guys is clearly superior in every sense, and also, unlike Ryu, doesn't have a pitch count that's sitting around 90.
Right. It would come down, like, Verlander would still be the guy that I want to get in, even at that Yahoo price. But there's a big enough difference there where I would start to at least be more willing to come off of him if it gets me better bats. Because, I mean, at that point, you're talking, like a 20-25% discount. Whereas on other sites, it's not there. What's Tanaka's Yahoo price compared to Verlander?
Tanaka's price on Yahoo is 40. So $4 cheaper than Ryu and Bumgarner.
I think that's really, really interesting just from the upside standpoint, because it's not a good matchup against Houston, but Tanaka has really good stuff, really good strikeout stuff, and he gives you that same kind of upside, even though it's not going to happen as frequently.
Sure. I'll say this much. Playing Verlander there is difficult. If you were to pair him with the cheapest player or the cheapest other pitcher, just say Homer Bailey, right? Just because he's the cheapest.
Sure.
You still only have $15 per player.
Yeah, that's tough.
It's really difficult. So it's way different on DraftKings and FanDuel. Playing Verlander on both of them is actually pretty easy. You had just alluded to potentially playing Tanaka. It's interesting because, I see it, but I also see just knowing that the blow up potential from Tanaka, I could see both sides of this one panning out. Both of them are equally scary.
Yeah, it's terrifying. It's not a good matchup. Houston doesn't strike out a lot. They have a lot of really good hitters. It's just that from a talent standpoint, I think he's better than some guys around him. I think he's very clearly better than Madison Bumgarner. I think that he's better than Yuli Chassin, who's like $600 less expensive. I think he's better than Miles Michaelis. It's a spot where if I had trouble getting to Verlander, or I have, an expensive stack where I want expensive one-offs, I don't mind taking that discount. You're talking about a pitcher in Tanaka that has really scaled back his fastball usage over the last couple of years, throws his slider a lot, throws his splitter a lot. Outside of Alex Bregman, you do get some reasonable swinging strike percentages against right-handed sliders from this team. So there is at least the potential there for him to get some swings and misses. Second point there would be that Bregman is my favorite hitter from Houston, and it's not really close. But it's a play where I don't think there's any reason you would need to get there in cash. But in tournaments with him projected at low ownership, he at least gives you that 30-point upside. For
sure. Any hitters you want to talk about elsewhere in this one before we move on?
Bregman's the guy for me. You look at the stuff that Tanaka throws, and in addition to, we know Bregman's a very, very good hitter, but getting a little bit deeper into it, looking at the stuff Tanaka throws, not only do I want to look at how a hitter has done against certain pitch types, and Bregman has had as much success against the stuff Tanaka throws as anyone on Houston, but I want to see guys that actually make contact, and Bregman has sub 10% swinging strike rates against sliders and splitters. So, very good hitter overall, and then looking more specifically, handles the stuff Tanaka throws and doesn't swing and miss at it. So I think he pretty clearly grades out for me as the best hitter in this game.
All right. St. Louis and the LA Dodgers, Miles Michaelis, Hyun-Jin Ryu. Let's start with Ryu here, because we've already kind of teased this spot a little bit, right? Look, this. I'm a huge fan of Ryu. I think he's really good. I just wish he had a different manager that wasn't limiting to 85, 90 pitches. Like, just take last season. he's been a reverse splits guy for his career, and I'm very careful about labeling someone a reverse splits pitcher unless we have the numbers to back it up. Last year, though, 30% strikeout rate against righties, 2.4% walk rate, and a swinging strike rate close to 14%. These are elite numbers, or as close to it as you can get. And you have a St. Louis lineup today that has 7 righties, one of them being a pitcher, and 2 lefties, one of them being Colton Wong. So, yes, I think this is a spot where you could put up very, very strong numbers. It just sucks knowing that with Dave Roberts, he's probably here's the thing. If Ryu comes into the 6th inning with 75 pitches and needs 20 to get out of it, Roberts will probably allow it. But if he throws 80 pitches through 6, he's probably not coming back out, and that sucks.
Yeah, and it's obviously being a National League team, and obviously this being a National League game, it makes it even easier for Roberts because he gets the pinch hit excuse whenever Ryu comes up in the 6th inning or 5th, 6th inning. So yeah, it's the price is just really prohibitive for me. I don't think that Ryu has a bad game. Obviously the Cardinals have a lot of really good right-handed hitters in this lineup, but I'd still give the edge to Ryu. It's just that you're not getting anything at his price. Like, it's not giving you any advantage over the Verlander lineups or anything like that. And it's really unlikely that he ends up being like the highest scorer on the slate. There's 16 pitchers on the slate. There's going to be a couple cheap guys that do well, most likely. Figuring them out is a whole other story, but just talking about an overall sense of the slate, how does Ryu really help you win a tournament? And I just think that it's unlikely that he is the guy that you have to have very often here at all.
And I agree with you. It's unfortunate because he's good. He's 19%. I do want to touch on this though. 19% less than Verlander on Yahoo, and only 8% cheaper than Verlander on FanDuel. We talked about how prohibitive Verlander is on Yahoo. Does that make a difference for you where him and Bumgarner are $10 cheaper at $44?
Yeah, especially because I assume, and obviously I don't know, but I assume that Bumgarner is going to have higher ownership than Ryu will. I mean, we're talking about a Cardinals team with a 4.1 implied run total compared to a San Diego team at 3.4.
I'll give you the projected
for Yahoo. Yeah, do we have it
for Yahoo?
Yeah. Okay.
Bumgarner is right now 49% projected ownership. Verlander, by the way, is 71% projected ownership, which that is really high. Ryu is 3%. I mean, that's crazy. If it's even close to that.
Yeah, much better pitcher than Bumgarner is at lower ownership. Ryu, I think, is a very good Yahoo play, given the ownership on Verlander and Bumgarner, and that it's actually difficult to get Verlander into your lineups.
I'm with you, man. Where are you at on Michaelis? I have such a tough time buying into him, Adam, and this season hasn't helped him out. He has a 1% swinging strike rate against lefties through his first 2 starts. It's tough for me to get on board with guys that really don't punch guys out, especially opposite-handed bats like Michaelis has struggled with. What's your take on him?
Dodgers are one of my favorite tournament stacks here because I don't think they'll have
by the 4.1 total.
What'd you say? Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Go. So I was shocked by it, but go ahead. Sorry, I've cut you off.
No. I mean, I like it. Them and the Nats both. I like where their implied run totals are because I think that the upside is enormous and it just keeps people off of them. You have this Dodgers lineup with no Justin Turner in there, which sucks, especially because it means he's probably going to pinch hit for someone at some point. But you have good lefties in this lineup with Peterson, Seager, Bellinger, Muncy. Verdugo, obviously a young top prospect for the Dodgers, and he's affordably priced hitting 6th. AJ Pollock, a good overall hitter hitting 4th. So it's a good Dodgers lineup, even without Turner in there. But Michaelis doesn't miss bats. He lets you put the ball in play. He also doesn't walk guys. And I was talking about it with Josh this morning, but when you're talking about upside in tournaments, that's actually important. I don't want to be taking hitters against a pitcher who's very likely to either get them out or walk them. I want a guy who isn't going to strike them out and isn't going to walk them, because if you let guys like Peterson, Bellinger, Seager hit the ball, good things normally you have a ton of upside, obviously. So I really like the Dodgers here. They, for the most part, are affordably priced as well. Bellinger at 4,900 on DraftKings is the only one who's really expensive at all, and he's probably the best hitter out of the group against Michaelis. So I really like the Dodgers, whether it be one-offs or full stacks here.
Right now, Bellinger's the best hitter in the league until further notice. He's been ridiculous.
Yeah.
Obviously, just talking results based right now,
Right.
but he's been awesome, man. He has really been good. And one thing that stood out to me, it was interesting to hear you mention that this is one of your favorite stacks, because I had mentioned the same thing in the deep dive. And there are a couple simple reasons, and ones that you already mentioned, but a couple others. First of all, Seager's super cheap, given a guy that's batting second and facing Michaelis. These guys are going to put the ball in play. You've got 5 lefties in the top 6 of the lineup. So even without Turner, you've got a bunch of guys with the platoon advantage. Also, I was astounded by the projected ownership on these guys. Bellinger's coming in around 3% everywhere. Corey Seager's a little bit higher, but nothing ridiculous. And that's just because he's discounted. Jock Peterson is also going to come in way lower than you'd expect, right? 5% on DraftKings right now. 1% on Yahoo. This is a stack where people are looking at Vegas. They're saying, well, I've got the Rockies, I've got the A's, the Braves, the Phillies, the Mariners, the Royals, right? I've got even Baltimore. No one wants to look at a Dodgers team whose total has actually come down to 4 even. They have the 4th lowest total on this entire slate.
Yeah, and if you want to look to one more thing here, because we do have this very left-handed heavy Dodgers lineup, Andrew Miller, he only threw 2 pitches yesterday, but he threw 27 on Saturday. It would be kind of surprising to me if Miller comes in, Miller being one of the lefties St. Louis has in their bullpen. So that basically leaves Tyler Webb as the only other lefty. Just one more thing, I think, working in the Dodgers' favor. It's going to be really difficult for St. Louis to match up with them later in the game.
All right, fair enough. Anything else here? St. Louis bats, anything we haven't touched on?
No, I think that's it for me.
All right. Kansas City, Seattle. Well, this one's interesting because you've got Homer Bailey here on the mound, and as of now, he's actually projected to have a decent amount of ownership, especially on DraftKings. 20%. 20%. That's insane. Sometimes I get the feeling that everyone envisions Homer Bailey as a guy that throws like 87-mile-per-hour fastballs, just because he gets blown up so much, and that's been the case. He's not a soft thrower. He's just really prone to getting rocked. And I mean, it's true. Like, what does he sit 94 or so on his fastball?
Yeah, he throws hard.
Yeah,
hard enough.
Exactly. That first game against Minnesota, I could be wrong. I think that was like the 45-degree day or whatever. His swinging strike rate on that specific start was insane. Don't expect that to continue. Sometimes I think, I don't even remember, Homer Bailey last year. I had a couple good Homer Bailey days where I actually played the guy, but it's terrifying. And that was generally when nobody would even consider it, and he was just 100% stacked against. I mean, what are you doing with Homer Bailey when he's projected to have 20% ownership?
Yeah, I mean, that's the part that makes it difficult for me, because right now on my initial crunch, without factoring in ownership or anything, Bailey is my second highest owned pitcher on DraftKings. The price tag is just really, really cheap. There are at least things we can take away from that first start that give us some semblance of potential in Bailey. He threw his curveball more than he was last season. He threw his splitter a lot more, which is the pitch that he really should be throwing a lot.
His two-seamer way less.
Yeah. So pitch type wise, there were some appealing things in that first start. And then the price tag obviously is really appealing as well. It's a dangerous spot against Seattle, though. It's a spot where I'm probably just going to end up on both sides of it, because Bailey's 5K and because Seattle's a pretty good offense here. But I don't mind getting to Bailey. It's just that getting to him at 20% ownership is kind of scary.
Right. It's very scary, actually. Just because it's Homer Bailey. But, he's a guy who, used the sinker like 12, 13, 14, 15, between 10, 15% of the time. I think he threw it, let's see what the raw pitch count on this was. He threw it 3 times in his first start. Like you said, slider, curve, splitter. He worked them in quite a bit. If even two of those pitches are decent, you're not going to be as bad. We'll see what happens with Homer Bailey, but I'm still interested in some of these Seattle bats for a couple of reasons. The first reason, and I'm not saying that you're not, because you just mentioned that you are. This is it's going to be almost 80 degrees at first pitch at Kauffman Stadium. So that's one thing that I really like. Super friendly weather, pretty neutral park. It's a neutral, slightly pitcher friendly park, but it's not AT&T. It's not Safeco. What do you make of this Seattle team that I think they're 9-2 to start the season? Just from top to bottom, these guys have been hitting well, from Mitch Haniger to Malik Smith to Domingo Santana to Jay Bruce, who's got 5 home runs already on the season. I could keep going. D. Gordon leads the league in stolen bases. Ryan Healy's tied for the league lead in doubles. They just keep getting it done. And Omar Narvaez is had been batting in the middle of the order. He's batting 7th today, was 5th yesterday. But we do have Daniel Vogelbach batting 5th today against Homer Bailey. So that's not exactly a bad thing.
Yeah, I think 1 through 6 here is pretty appealing. It kind of falls off a cliff. Like Narvaez is okay, and then you get more in D. Gordon, but tons of upside here. You mentioned Jay Bruce off to a really nice start this year. I like the spot for him, and Encarnacion's inexpensive. I think that the Mariners as a stack are cheaper than they really should be in the spot against Bailey, and so that obviously makes them appealing. I assume I'll have more Bailey than I will Mariners just because of the amount of hitting options on the slate and the amount of pitching options on the slate. But 1 through 6 for Seattle, I like all of them.
Yes, sir. Me too.
I did get Bailey's numbers. So he threw a splitter 25% in that first start. Since last season, he's allowed a 288 expected WOBA with an 18% swinging strike percentage on that pitch.
Yeah, that's pretty decent. Pretty decent.
Something to at least it's one of the first things that I will be looking to see what happened in tonight's game, regardless of his results, is just what was he throwing and specifically that pitch.
Yeah, 19% against righties in that first game. The slider he used a lot, 27%. And you got 40% whiffs per swing on it. The splitter, though, against righties, not whiff per swing, but the actual whiff rate was 25%. That's huge. So I said, what were his raw whiff counts on it, right? He got 2 actual whiffs on pretty much all of these because he didn't use them that much. But again, if he can miss bats with more than one secondary offering, he's going to have some value this year, but he's also going to get rocked quite a bit too.
Right. There's neither of us are saying like Homer Bailey's turned some corner and he's a great pitcher now, like jump on him while he's this cheap.
Right.
It's that he at least does have potential at this price. He's not. He may not be the absolute gas can that he was or has been for the last few years.
Where are you at on the Kansas City Royals against Felix Hernandez? Who, look, I'm telling you, Adam, there's just no way he can sustain decent performance going forward. I mean, I get it. He's a crafty guy. He can figure out how to be decent and not allow a ton of runs. But Felix Hernandez, what was his velocity at? Wasn't it sub 90 in his first? Wasn't it below 90?
I believe so.
I thought it was. It was. Oh no, it was actually I think 91. God, why did I think it was below that? Maybe it's because last year he was down below 90. But anyway, Felix Hernandez has got a lot of mileage.
Yeah, and he hasn't been particularly good at holding runners throughout his career, basically depending on the season, average to below average, which is a big thing against Kansas City here when you have Merrifield, Mondesi at the top. Gordon will run a bit as well, a team that looks to steal bases. So also a really inexpensive team outside of Merrifield and Mondesi. Merrifield and Mondesi, obviously the 2 most appealing plays in this lineup, so I don't mind their price tags. But then you get savings on guys like Ryan O'Hearn and Jorge Soler and Alex Gordon hitting in the middle of this order. So I think that they're a pretty appealing stack. I like getting to them because you can get them, you can get Verlander, and you can get decent one-offs or a decent SP2. So I really like the price tags here. As far as one-offs, I think that I would look Merrifield, Mondesi, and then if you needed value, Alex Gordon's fine.
All right. Sounds good. Colorado, Atlanta. We got a couple games to go here, or a few games, 3 to go. Kyle Freeland, Julio Teheran. And I'm going to present a question to you and have you answer this. Unfortunately, David Dahl won't be in the lineup. He was one of the guys I really liked here. You have Tapia batting second, though. I just always like lefties more against Teheran. And the reason I say it more so today, look, I'm not saying you shouldn't like the Rockies. They're facing Julio Teheran at Coors Field. What I will say, though, is if there's one good pitch he has, it's the slider that he can use against righties. And when you're at Coors Field and your breaking stuff isn't breaking, your curveball isn't working, their slider will work. I do think he can use that slider to not get absolutely ravaged by a lot of these righties. Lefties, on the other hand, you look at his curveball, you look at his changeup, they've both been beat up pretty bad over the years by lefties. I think this is a spot where lefties are far more inclined to hit him better than righties. Again, Adam, not saying that Arenado and Story and such can't have really solid games at the plate, but I do think it's at least reasonable to point out that you're talking about someone who against righties has had a slider that has gotten pretty decent results over the years.
Yeah, I'm higher on Teheran now than I was this morning. This Rockies lineup sets up basically perfect for him. Blackmon and Tapia at the top are the issue. Blackmon, I think, is one of the top hitters on the slate. Tapia isn't as good a hitter, but he does have some speed. Teheran not good at holding runners either. So those two guys are good. Then obviously you have Arenado and Story are good hitters, but Teheran is much better against righties than lefties. He threw his slider 40% of the time so far this season. Since last season, he's allowed a 231 WOBA with a 25% whiff percentage against righties. So, clearly a pitch that has a lot of success. But then once you get past Arenado and Story, you get to right-handed hitters who aren't even good. Chris Iannetta, not good. Josh Fuentes doesn't projects like a 23% strikeout rate and not much power. Pat Valleca, another guy that, low 20 strikeout percentage, not much power. Garrett Hampson projects for a mid, like a 16, 17% strikeout percentage, but he's a speed guy with like a 120 projected ISO. And then you get the pitcher. So it's just, not only is it a right-handed heavy lineup, but it's a really, really short lineup for the Rockies. Like you have three good hitters, you have another lefty in Tapia, and then you have absolutely nothing here. So the ballpark is obviously scary, but at a $5,800 price tag where you need two pitchers, I am inclined to have a pretty healthy amount of Julio Teheran here. And it's scary, but I don't think it's any more scary than other spots that we're going to talk about.
Yeah, and even if you're not rostering Teheran, you have to at least acknowledge that he does have the one single pitch that you need against a righty heavy lineup like this, that especially at the bottom of the order doesn't offer much at all.
Right. And to put it in context, I almost never am on Julio Teheran. So it's not like I have some affinity for the guy and I'm willing to just keep playing him. It's just that for me, he grades out as good as any of these cheap guys. Most of the appealing SP2s are like 71, 7,300. So you're getting a substantial discount on Teheran. I think that he's a pretty strong SP2 option.
All right. Atlanta Braves against Kyle Freeland, Adam. Go ahead.
Freeland's, I think, a pretty decent pitcher. Really high ground ball rate. Doesn't get, doesn't pitch much worse at home than he does on the road. Does a good job getting ground balls. But again, you do have some scary righties in this lineup with Ozzie Albies, who's been much better from the right side of the plate, even going back to the minor leagues. Yeah. Ronald Acuna, Josh Donaldson obviously is a potent bat, or at least has been in the past. So
I'm surprised Camargo's not in the middle of this lineup. He's been very good from the right side of the plate as well.
Yeah, I'm surprised he's not in it, but Swanson, hitting sixth is reasonable as well. The lefties here, Freeman and Markakis, both very difficult strikeouts. Freeland has a 30+% strikeout percentage against lefties, so I'm not interested in Freeman or Markakis outside of stacks really, but I think that it still makes the spot a little bit tougher for Freeland. I had mentioned this morning that I liked him more than Teheran just because I think he's a better pitcher. But after seeing the two lineups here, I would put Teheran ahead of Freeland just because I think there is more strikeout upside for Teheran. I think it's a much more appealing Rockies lineup for him than the Braves lineup is for Freeland. And on the other side, I'll expect to have more Atlanta stacks than Colorado stacks just because I am more interested in getting to hitters like Albies and Acuna and Donaldson than I am in getting to, Arenado, Story, Iannetta.
Right. Yeah, and when you've got the matchup, the park baked into the price tag like this, just because they're at Coors doesn't mean Josh Donaldson's worth $5K.
Right. I don't think that you have to force either of these stacks in today
Neither
unless
do
they're
I.
projected at low ownership.
But I will say this much. If it's not for Donaldson and I guess Tapia if you want, or Albies on the other side, these are not teams that I'm looking to get heavy with one-offs either, if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
Yeah,
Like
Blackman and Albies, I think, will be my two highest owned, or
right.
the two one-offs that I'm most interested in.
They're great plays. But outside of that, I'm not looking to just sprinkle in other guys from it just because they're at Coors Field. And again, Adam, you've got 6 teams with run totals or projected at 5 or higher. So it's not like this is the only game that has favorable hitting conditions at all.
Right. Agreed.
All right. Let's move on. 2 to go. Before we do, just wanted to let you know that you can get 50% off your first month of subscription at awesemo.com. Pretty solid deal. From Fantasy Cruncher add-on to the ownership projections we reference. Yes, that's right. We have the Yahoo ownership projections in beta right now. Proud to have them sponsoring today's deeper dive. And basically, look, lineup builder, Fantasy Cruncher, all of our ownership projections for NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA, NASCAR, and everything when it's happening, we've got it. Player projections, articles from Adam, myself, Josh Engelman, Ben Rasa, and so much more that I apologize if I'm forgetting you, but you can check all of it out on awesemo.com. All you have to do to get 50% off your first month is use the promo code Deeper Dive. That's one word, Deeper Dive, to get 50% off your first month at awesemo.com. And when you do, say what's up in the Slack chat for premium members. We're happy to raise our hand to you. All right, Adam. 2 games, San Francisco, San Diego, Angels, and Milwaukee to go. We've got a few minutes to close this out. Madison Bumgarner and Eric Lauer. Right now, the lowest expected total on the slate is the Padres against Bumgarner. But the truth is, against lefties, they don't have that many strikeouts, at least not as many as you would expect them to. And they do have some potency from the right side of the plate. I know Bumgarner had a very good start in his first game against them. And it's also at AT&T Park. One thing that very much favors him. But I don't know. This one is a little bit iffy to me.
Bumgarner feels like a guy that is perfectly fine, but that comes in higher owned than he should at a price tag that's not exactly cheap when you talk about the type of pitcher he is now. He's not a high strikeout pitcher anymore. He is much better at home, which we would expect, and that's the case here. It just feels like a guy who goes out and gets you like 18 to 20 points at 9,300 and at like high ownership, and it's just completely mediocre. So I wouldn't want to talk anyone off of him. I just think that I'd probably end up coming in under the field. I would rather in tournaments look to guys like Hunter Renfroe, Manny Machado, Ian Kinsler at inexpensive price points and look to get, a one-off that leverages against a popular Bumgarner righty with power that can do some damage at a cheap price tag.
I'm with you. Maybe some Tatis Jr. if he's in the lineup. This is the only lineup we don't have yet. What are your thoughts quickly on Eric Lauer? And of course, this San Francisco offense, if you have any interest in venturing out that way, which, generally ends in colossal failure.
Yeah, I mean, San Francisco, not very good. I think Tyler Austin being added to this lineup makes it a little bit scarier for Lauer.
Added second, too.
Yeah, Austin not in the player pool, at least on DraftKings, but it does make it a little bit less appealing for Lauer, who I think is basically an average pitcher facing a bad lineup in a good park. He's the kind of guy where if I have like $7,500 to spend, I don't mind getting there. But if I'm looking to like optimize a lineup or get as much upside into it as I can, I would lean towards just saving money, taking on a risky SP2 and upgrading my bats over paying $7,500 for Lauer.
I still just think that's a little bit expensive for the guy.
Yep.
Given his lack of strikeout upside. I think on DraftKings, give him like 6,800 or something. On Yahoo, he's the 4th cheapest pitcher. I don't have a problem with that. $31. What's that?
I said neither do I.
Yeah, and on FanDuel, you're not playing him as your SP1, so there's that. But the upside's limited here, and you're not going to get a ton of strikeouts from the right side for the Giants, even if they're not going to produce a lot of runs or get a lot of base runners. So it's very much a give-and-take scenario there that will likely result in not a lot of runs and not a lot of strikeouts. All right, Adam, you want to close it out with the Angels and Brewers?
Yep.
All right, Jhoulys Chacín against the Angels. We do have a lineup, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 lefties, 5 righties. Always important when facing Chacín, who is a bit pricey. And Trevor Cahill, very friendly park. Look, I think Trevor Cahill to me is a very solid tournament option here. His ownership is a little bit higher than I thought it would be, but it's not crazy at all. We know that he's a high K rate guy. He gets a lot of swinging strikes. We know he has a very solid out pitch. And while the Brewers are a very good team, it's a bad park shift for them, number one. And they do have a decent amount of strikeouts, around 25% strikeouts so far versus righties. What are your thoughts on the pitching matchup here at Angel Stadium?
So I'll start with Chacin because I think it's going to be quicker. But at his price tag, I don't really have any interest. There's 5 righties in the lineup, and we definitely prefer him against righties. But even the righties here don't strike out a lot. The lefties don't strike out a lot. It's just not a price tag that I'm looking to pay. For Cahill, I don't feel good about him. I don't want a ton of him, but
I never feel good about Cahill.
Right. But as far as tournament options go, if I am ending up in that range, like I would prefer Cahill to Lauer just based on the upside. I think that it's a quote unquote safer spot for Lauer, but that's not really a thing in baseball. Like safety doesn't really exist. Cahill has the better strikeout stuff. He's the better pitcher than Lauer. So I would prefer him in tournaments. It's just a matchup that really scares me because Milwaukee does have a lot of very good hitters. They do have some speed, and Cahill, when he gets in trouble, it's normally because he's walking too many guys, but also he's not good at controlling the running game. So guys like Lorenzo Cain, I think, are really good one-offs because they give you the stolen base upside. But it's just a lineup, 1 through 8 that has good hitters with power and that has a nice mix of speed in there. So I think it's a really scary spot for Cahill.
So do I. But if we're talking about cheaper pitchers with strikeout upside, he's definitely one of them.
Yep.
By the way, price point on DraftKings and Yahoo for Lorenzo Cain is really cheap. I mean, he's cheaper on DraftKings than he is on FanDuel. That should tell you all you need to know about that. Any other hitters here that we haven't talked about before we turn it over to Live Before Lock, specifically the Angels, since we already discussed the Brewers?
Yeah, I mean, the top 3 on the Angels, you have 2 good enough lefties in Calhoun and Bohr, and then you have Mike Trout. So I expect that Trout's, my guess would be Trout's ownership is pretty low on this slate because it's not a great matchup against Chacin, and then you do have guys in cores to pay for. But whenever you can get Mike Trout at lower than highest owned hitter on the slate ownership, it's pretty appealing.
All right. Well, that'll do it for us. Stick around. Live Before Lock coming up next for baseball, of course. And there is no basketball today because we've got the NCAA championship game, but that'll be back. We've got 2 more days of basketball to go, Tuesday and Wednesday. But here it comes. Live Before Lock. Major League Baseball taking you up till 7:05 Eastern Time. Thanks as always for tuning in. Before you head out, it'd be greatly appreciated if you hit us with a thumbs up, like the video. If you do actually like the video and want to see more of our content, we greatly appreciate it, and it helps us a lot. Subscribe and hit that notification bell as well. Until tomorrow, good luck. We'll see you back here next time on The Deeper Dive.